for the next session. And we'll get started again. Let me share my screen. Okay, any questions related to the data extension setup, validating that data in your query before you do the setup, double checking, which data views you should be building your history on? Okay, all right, let's take a look. Obviously, once you've done all that work with in Query Studio, super easy to create that query. And so I've got an example, let's see, of that query created. So yeah, so here's the query. I think I ran this just to populate the data. Has all the fields in there, just from the data view. That's sort of your first pass to populate the last 6 months of data into your Click Data View data extension. So if we go back to that, sure, here's the data. Here's all that data we just saw in Query Studio. So that's sort of your first pass to pull that in. And then if you wanted to, once that's done, you could go back into the query and let's just edit this and modify it on how you would want to set this up to work on a daily basis. So we would want to use the event date. And it's greater than or equal to date add, like day. Depending on how often you do it, probably just day is probably fine. And let's get date. If I bring this over into Query Studio, I might not have a click from yesterday, but we'll just try it. Again, you'll just want to validate this. You could run it just to validate that it's working. I'm probably not going to have a data click, but I don't think I clicked on an email yesterday in our environment. But it seems like a two-phase approach, right? You want to populate your data views for the last 6 months. You sort of got that populated. And then when you're ready to turn on the audit on a daily basis, just add the event date. Some people like to do, greater than and then less than, a combination just to isolate those 24-hour periods, or you could do something simple like this. Yeah, didn't think that was going to happen. And then you just build it out. Oh, it's probably also important to use the append function, not update for sure, and obviously not overwrite there. So you just keep, every day you're just adding to that data extension. And also one thing I wanted to call out that we've seen some data view history automations where they have select star. You don't need to detail out all those data extension fields, and it's a quick way to stand this up. We've heard from Salesforce support that they don't recommend that anymore. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pull in all of the different fields. So it's kind of cumbersome to go right down through each of these data views and put every single one of those data fields in there. But I think it's, you're going to be setting this up once. I think it's probably worth to use Query Studio to go through each one and take a look at the data. Helps you sort of be mindful of that, to choose which ones you need, which ones you don't. And so, you might be comfortable using select star, but you've sort of heard that's not the best approach. And that's pretty much it. I mean, all you would need to do is just continue building out each. You'd have a click, you'd have an open, you'd have a send, you'd have a job, you'd have, it's the same process. You'd set up your automation to, run on a daily basis. So we just set this up for, say we're going to set it up for tomorrow, Eastern Standard Time. It's going to run on a daily basis. That's start time, daily.
It's the start time, the second input below where you are right now.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry. One other minor point, depending on your environment, sometimes it's helpful to pick an odd time too. A lot of times people have everything going off at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock on the hour. Sometimes it's helpful to have those things running on an odd increment. And that's it. There you go. And that's it. That's pretty much the data view history automation. See if there's any question. Okay, so Santiago, I believe the limit is 4,000 characters. Okay, that's good to know. Think that might still be the hack. If you don't put any value in there, you might get unlimited. We have a use case where we've built a preview resend functionality where the entire email HTML comes in a field in a data extension. And so we've used, just when you're creating that data extension field, you just don't put anything in there and it's able to go unlimited. But Salesforce might be, stopping that at any minute, and it might be already stopped. Anyways, any other questions about this data view automation? Okay, let's go back into the deck and want to wrap up. We covered that. So build a query in Query Studio, build the historical data extension, populate all the fields, pull in the last 24 hours. And then some of the tips, I think what we covered today, know all of your different data views. Don't just say, like, I'm going to create all of them and populate all of them. You don't need them all to be populated. Be mindful of those data types, and especially those lengths. In your process, probably makes sense, right? Populate the entire last 6 months, then go daily. Depending on what you'd like to do, you can set your retention on your data extensions to 2 years, 3 years, so you're not capturing data way too far back. So for instance, for those clickers, do you really need someone who's clicked, who hasn't clicked in the last 3 years? You probably shouldn't be emailing them. And then, check and make sure that data looks right? Like, go back into that data, making sure it's looking good. Don't just set it and forget it. You might need to add a field. If you're seeing that, we don't need all these fields, you can take those fields out to save on your data. And those are some of the tips that sort of I've run into. Any questions? Any other thoughts from anybody in the group? Matt, any other thoughts related to, how you've implemented this in the past?
I think one thing on your prior slide, you mentioned looking back prior 24 hours. I think that's super helpful considering it on an hourly basis, because I think the data views are going to be storing a lot of these activities on system time. So I know in the past, I may have set these up to look at yesterday, but yesterday based on the system time may vary from yesterday based on your local time. So you may be missing a chunk if you're not looking at that on a 24-hour basis based off whenever you're triggering it. You get lots of different ways to configure that, but definitely something to keep in mind, especially as you're reviewing that data. Make sure you don't have a gap there. And then one thing you mentioned earlier, Tim, that I thought was really helpful, you mentioned joining jobs across job ID, subscriber ID, batch ID, and list ID back to the send log. And I think that's really helpful, especially because the send log is where you may have that email address field, especially the email, for the send, not necessarily for the subscriber. Could you talk maybe a little bit more, if it's in scope, about that send log and whether that's another data view or something that people may need to configure in their instance?
Great idea. Yeah, let's go take a look at that send log. So sendlog is, let's see, a unique data extension, right? I think you all can, in your environment, you can set it up. You can only set it up once. Here's those views, right? Job ID, list ID, batch ID, sub ID. Those are some of the standard fields that come with your sendlog. Let's take a look at these records, just so that you can see that data carry over, right? So, you know, each one of these sends has that unique ID to make that connection. And to Matt's point, I think if you look back in the data views may not even have email. Let me see if job has, I don't think it does. It has the name of the email itself. It may not, subscribers, well, subscribers has email address, so you're able to get that there. But again, that could be, depending on your business unit, you might be able to get, but anyways. Yeah, so sendlog is definitely worth, you know, setting up, customizing for all of your use cases to make sure that you're populating all the values. So let me just give you an example of what some of the different fields that we're populating in the sendlog. So, which can also help match with the data that you're pulling in from your data views. So for an example, for that functionality that we have that allows you in the Salesforce CRM environment to preview and resend an individual email, we are capturing some data at time of send. So we populate the actual email ID in the AMP script when we're doing a send. That can be helpful to look up from the data that's in individual email results in the Salesforce CRM environment. We're also populating the journey data extension. Again, that's something that links back to allow us to do that preview resend functionality. So you can customize your send log to any variable that you want to capture at time of send. And then when you're doing your AND script in your email, just make sure you're setting this variable to the value, and it will populate the send log at time of send with that variable. But to, like Matt said, this is sort of like your link to all of these data views, are these 4 values that we looked at in the job, I think it was also in the click. It gives you that pure connection between the send log, those data views, and sort of gives you a little bit more of a complete picture of the data that may be in the data views. It may also be in the send log, but it sort of combines it all together.
Yeah, and I love seeing you've got the send from email address in there and the send from name. I know sometimes when you're trying to evaluate your data after the fact, you don't get those resolved values, and you will get it in the send log if you're storing it there. So I found that super helpful when somebody says, hey, you know, did this email go out? I know not only did it come from the sales rep, but what was the actual value I put in there? That can be really helpful when you're troubleshooting. Maybe people are coming and going from your organization and you have emails going from historical members. So having that kind of resolved data can be really helpful when you're looking at things.
Awesome. Great call out, Matt. I should have folded that in to this. Makes total sense, right? All of your different data sources. Great call. Thank you. Let's take a look at this from Rakesh. He provided this data view. Yeah, I've seen this before. This is kind of cool too. Thank you for providing that. Yeah, it sort of shows the linkage between all the different data views, how they work together. Like for instance, how journey and journey activity can be connected. And then the journey object ID comes back to that, to Matt's point, that triggered send from object ID is how you connect into the activity that gets you into journey. Super cool. Yeah, this is an incredibly helpful way to connect all those different data views and how they sort of speak with each other. Super awesome. Yeah, sometimes you you find this out by saying, you know, just a little bit exploring, especially in Query Studio, like, all right, I need to get from job, I need to get from click to journey. How do I do that? You know, it's like, all right, let me just output all of click and see what all looks like. let's output journey. Oh, there's nothing there that matches. Oh, look, journey activity. These two fields match. Great. Let's connect these two, and then I can connect. Yeah, sometimes you're just exploring that way, but this is a great suggestion. One thing I also want to mention, and Matt, I don't know if you've leveraged this as well, but there are additional data views. So if you contact your Salesforce account exec, it is a cost to it, but there are some pretty amazing data views that you can get in addition to the standard data views. So reach out. I think for the one that we were trying to utilize in particular, we were trying to find the name of the data extension of a journey. We wanted to be able to identify the actual data extension that is being used for the entry event for a journey. And we got an additional custom data view that allowed us to get that data point programmatically. You know, obviously you can capture that and sort of manually capture it, but through data views. Anyway, Matt, have you used those custom data views as something that you've turned on in your prior environments?
I have not. I was unaware of that. I'm very excited to start Googling after we get off this meeting and try to see what else is out there.
You would think that they would give you like the whole kit and caboodle. I think there's not a whole lot there as far as there. And I think if you just read it, I think the sales, your account executive, but you would think they'd be like, hey, this is what you get out of the box. And hey, these are all the ones you get extra. But there's not a whole lot out there, but super cool. And I'm not sure what the cost is related to, but maybe you can negotiate when you're renewing. Say, hey, can you throw in those custom data views? You know, it's just a turn on button for them. It's just like a Boolean turn, you know, this account, custom data views, you know. Thank you, Rakesh, for sharing that. It was really cool. Any other questions? Any other thoughts related to this topic?
I've got one more quick thing, Tim. I think you had mentioned making sure to use append as you are kind of storing these historically, and I think you're absolutely right on that point. Historically, that's the great way to do it. For people who may be the only admin in their organization, I found a lot of value with an overwrite for something like bounces yesterday. I've got an automation set up to run early morning that says, take me, you know, show me all of the bounces from yesterday, and that data extension constantly overwrites. And I found that helpful because I may not have the bandwidth to be looking at my deliverability, you know, daily at a very close level. I've got some automation set up to kind of surface if there are larger issues. And if that bounce kind of rate jumps up over that 1%, then I've got a data extension I can go look at right away that shows me everything from yesterday. I found that really helpful when troubleshooting things like a domain name change or maybe something, you know, at a corporate level. You know, it can be really helpful if you look at your bounces and see everything's from the same domain. Great. I know exactly what I need to troubleshoot. Not always going to be your issue, but I found that helpful in the few times that I've had spikes, you know, in my deliverability rates.
Amazing, Matt. I know that you're transitioning. Congratulations on transitioning, and your schedule wasn't available for the Automation Studio Bootcamp, but oh my gosh, would love to have you do a series on what you just talked about. That just sounds like a Automation Studio deliverability suite of solutions. Oh my gosh, it sounds like just some fundamental solutions there that I would love to learn more about. So if you ever have time, I know you're a busy guy, you know, please reach out. I'd love to have you on to go through exactly what you talked about. That would be so cool to see.
Yeah, I'll see if I can clear some time. And thank you for putting this on. Again, I think this is a great series, and you know, I'm very appreciative that you guys are putting this out in the community.
Yeah, super awesome. Okay, yes, Guy, you can add a custom field to a send log. It is as easy as adding any field to your data extension. It is basically a data extension, but obviously you want to be very careful when you do that. Especially if usually send logs are shared across business units. You know, be very mindful whenever you're adding a new field to a send log, because you can add to your data. You know, send logs can be massive. Obviously, every single send, you know, every single subscriber that's sent. So if you send 10,000 emails, that's 10,000 records in your send log. So yeah, it's as easy as edit fields and adding a field, but you want to be very mindful. You definitely have like an admin and an overall enterprise admin to do that. You know, for other clients, we've done that before. We've had to like submit a very formal request and double check and all of that whenever we're adding a field to a send log. Great question.
Is it possible to get that AMP script you talked about capturing the send log? And what do you mean that you can only set the send log up once? What does that mean?
Yeah, great question. Matt, do you want to answer that on the send log?
Sure. So the send log, when you configure this in your account, it's a one-time thing. It's basically you turn that feature on, and then I don't think you can turn it back off. So it's going to create a data extension for you automatically where this information is going to be captured. And then to Tim's point, some of these fields are going to be custom. So as you add them to the send log, that data extension will start capturing them on a go-forward basis. The AMP script is going to be just like setting any other data extension field within your email send, but what you're going to be looking for, I believe, are called system attributes. And Tim, please correct me if I'm wrong there. But something you'll do is like I'm going to set my @email address variable to _email ADDR, I believe is the system attribute syntax there. And what that's going to do is it's going to populate your data extension values in your send log automatically. It is a little odd because it's like you're not doing a lookup, you're not necessarily referencing that data extension. Marketing Cloud is going to pull that in at send time based on those values that you're setting. So I think that's what I've got off the cuff, but there is some more information out there. I'm sure we can put some information in the chat about configuring a send log if there's more interest there.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And that's putting it on each email that you create.
Correct.
Yeah, it'll be on every send. Yeah.
Okay.
And I've got a link to the help documentation that I'll drop right here in the chat.
Yeah, you might have, like, if you have in your email, you might have a footer component that has an AMP script block that has, like, for instance, like Matt said, for our example, another reason why you want to be very mindful of the fields in your send log is that whenever you're setting that variable, so like Matt said, just to populate journey data extension, it's as simple as set @journey data extension, the name of the field in send log equals, and then whatever variable you're setting it to, in your code, and that's it. That's all you need to set, to populate that value in the send log. So it's good to make sure when your send log variables are not something that you would normally use, which is in general AMP script. So if you're using journey data extension and it just you're setting a variable for a lookup and all of that, be mindful of the fields that you use in your send log for that. But it is incredibly simple, right? It's just set at whatever your variables in send log, and then whatever you're creating it, and that's all you have to do, and it populates it. It's kind of magical. I think also, so I'll give you another example of we've done.
While you're navigating here, Tim, I think one of the great things while we're talking about building historical data view automations, you can do that with your send log too. So to Tim's point, as you're only saving maybe 10 days worth of sends in your send log, you can set up a very similar automation to kind of track that send log historically, especially if you want to push that to an external source like a data lake or maybe use an extract activity. Lots of ways to save that without kind of ballooning your Marketing Cloud storage as well.
Awesome. Here's another article on how to use a send log. And then I think there's another one here about tracking data that also refers to setting like the different variables in the send log in there. So definitely check out those two articles as well. Woohoo! Any other questions? This is great. Great questions. Okay, thanks everybody. Sorry about the double Zoom. We'll get that corrected. And Matt, ping us. Love to have that come back for that amazing. Okay, awesome. I know you're busy. Thanks everybody for joining. And definitely check out the session on Thursday. And then if on Saturday you're interested on the Agentforce workshop, and then also the Agentforce Bootcamp coming up is going to be so cool. definitely put that on your calendar. It's going to be amazing. So anyways, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks a lot, Matt. Appreciate it. Nice to see you.
Appreciate it.
See you. Bye.